Echoes of Betrayal by Japi Mazwi.
Chapter 10. Where the Hen Eats Its Eggs. November 8th, 2008. When my mother fell ill, it was my uncle, her only sibling, who stepped forward. With the quiet grace of duty, he and his wife, Madawu, took her from our relative's home in Lobengula West and sheltered her under their own roof. I will never be able to thank Madawu enough. When the nurses asked my uncle to bring toiletries or bathe his sister, it was Madawu who rolled up her sleeves. Her hands became my mother's comfort. Words fail me. May God himself reward her where my language cannot reach. As a small gesture of gratitude, I sent them clothes in bulk from Highbury Park Market in London. But for them both, I chose tailored suits from Marks & Spencer. One good turn deserves another. My uncle's house in Philanderbur stood beside the late Joshua Nkomo's, a house that once held the heartbeat of a people's hope. Nkomo, the founding father of Zimbabwean politics, lovingly known as Father Zimbabwe, had once fled from the very independence he helped to birth. When the revolution turned in on itself, he slipped across the border into Botswana, a man of towering presence disguised, they said, as a woman. A giant humbled into exile. His silhouette distorted beneath borrowed skirts. A rumor painted him absurd, but the truth was tragedy. He eventually landed in London, without a passport, yet carrying the weight of a betrayed nation. Comrade, moment of madness. The man who had once been Nkomo's secretary sat on his passport like a thief hoarding gold, hoping to clip Nkomo's wings. But the man who once paved our road to independence lit the path again, pointing silently to Europe and the West when the hen began eating her own eggs in 2000. And so we ran toward the open doors of the UK, the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, even Venezuela. We scattered like birds startled by gunfire. My uncle's sons fled too. The eldest settled in Australia, the youngest in New Zealand. They left with vows, promises to buy their parents a home in Hillside or Kumalo. But years passed, and promises withered in the dry wind of diaspora dreams. I made the same vow to my mother that one day she too would live in a house with tiled floors, a big graden, and flowers at the front. But 5 years later, that dream looked as elusive as a stalker in plain sight. Life in the diaspora is no banquet. Without proper papers, the table remains bare. Though I held a blue British refugee passport, that document was a paradox. It allowed me sanctuary, but not freedom. I could not go home. Immigration laws are crafted like cages made of paper and iron, thin in reason, heavy in punishment. I was expected to live in the UK as if my mother did not exist on the other side of the planet. I broke those rules. I went back. Let it not be forgotten that slavery had laws, and apartheid had laws too. Laws do not always deserve obedience. Had they discovered my visit to Zimbabwe, they would have deported me like smuggled drugs, fighter jet fast. That I had family, roots, and a mother whose life was wilting mattered not to them. To those who traffic in cruelty, humanity is an inconvenience. Look at London's shame. Vans roaring through the streets like judgment, spewing diesel and hate, emblazoned with blood-red letters. In the UK illegally. Go home or face arrest. When I left Zimbabwe in 2003, the country was already on a steep descent. But by 2008, it had reached a depth no shovel could dig out. People were hollow-eyed, walking hungry, thin, tired, silent. When hunger devours the black body, the skin darkens and shines, an eerie gloss like a preserved corpse. I saw those mummies in motion on the streets of Bulawayo. gleaming skeletons shuffling through ghost avenues. Women were using old newspapers as tampons. Children were lucky to eat once a day. Men abandoned work altogether. Their monthly pay couldn't even cover the fare that took them to work each day. Zimbabwe's inflation made Germany's post-World War I crisis look like a bank error. Once a breadbasket, we had become a basket case. We fled, arms full of billion-dollar notes that could not buy bread. Meanwhile, Comrade Moment of Madness stood at the podium, spitting venom, telling Tony Blair, "Keep your Britain and I'll keep my Zimbabwe." He mocked diplomacy and declared, "The only Blair I know is a toilet." While he wagged his tongue, the opposition cried for sanctions in the name of human rights. And as these two bulls clashed, it was the grass, us, who bled and withered. On my many hospital visits, I saw it. Nurses cold as marble, doctors with eyes empty of mercy. I feared for my mother more with each passing hour. My uncle's neighbour told me of her own horror. She gave birth under the blade, sliced open without warning, her belly breached under local anaesthesia, conscious, confused, and powerless. "I felt hands stirring my insides," she whispered, and I fought the urge to vomit. What kind of country slices open women like bread loaves? I had enough British pounds to buy medicine, but medicine did not exist. Money was useless in a place where pharmacies were haunted, not stocked. Cash couldn't buy care. Lack of medicine plus apathy? That was death's equation. So I turned my hope toward heaven. But God was hard to find in Satan's paradise. Churches bloomed across Zimbabwe like weeds in dry soil. Where governments failed, faith sprang up. We clung to prayer the way a drowning man clutches reeds. I placed my mother's life in God's hands, because no hands in Zimbabwe were clean enough or kind enough to hold it.
Every betrayal leaves an echo. Chapter 11 is coming next. Get your copy of Echoes of Betrayal on Amazon and Gumroad. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next chapter.